Chapter 1907 Sacred Gold. Chao Wang Chai did not have any expression of regret or pity for the dead man on the ground, as if he were just seeing a piece of firewood fall to the ground, and was not at all concerned. He looked at Zhang Yi and said indifferently, "It's fine. The cleaning team will come and clean up later. Don't worry about affecting the environment here." Zhang Yi didn't say much, and continued to walk forward with Chao Wang Chai. It wasn't until they had walked down the street that he heard the sound of an engine roaring in his ears. "Are there still factories here?" Zhang Yi was a little surprised. But after walking around the corner, when he saw what was in front of him, even though he had been through many ups and downs, his pupils suddenly contracted. A large garbage truck-like machine was working in front of him, with a bucket in the front scooping up a large pile of things and piling them up. This is how Zhang Yi had seen garbage trucks work. But the vehicle in front of him was not scooping up garbage. It was scooping up bodies. Piles and piles of corpses. Frozen stiff, dressed in black and gray, they had been casually thrown on the ground, then scooped up by the forklift and piled high. The corpses on the ground were piled haphazardly, at least hundreds of them, and in the front, a high wall had already been built with corpses. Yagu and Chao Wang Chai also walked over. Yagu was not emotional, just lit a cigarette and took a silent drag, then offered it to Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi did not take it. Chao Wang Chai pointed at the car and said, "Look, those are the cleaning team. They're at work." Zhang Yi was silent for a moment and asked, "Aren't they going to be buried?" Chao Wang Chai seemed to have heard something unbelievable and stared at Zhang Yi with wide eyes. "How can you do that? That's a serious waste of resources. Our KG Kingdom is a country with scarce resources, and no resources can be wasted. After these people die, their bodies will also be put to good use, serving the commander same with loyalty. Whether it's used as fuel or fertilizer, it's very good. Even after I, Chao Wang Chai, die, I hope that I can nourish this land with my body and offer the commander my last loyalty." Yagu applauded.
Pat, pat, pat.
He looked at Chao Wang Chai approvingly. "You are worthy of the name, Chao Wang Chai. Your spirit is an example that all people in the KG Kingdom should follow." Chao Wang Chai puffed out his chest with pride. Even though he was already as skinny as a chicken frame, Yagu's praise made him feel infinitely glorious. Zhang Yi looked at the bodies piled up like rubbish and remained silent for a long time. He had thought that he had already experienced hell during his time in Tianhai City. But after arriving here, he had truly seen hell. In Tianhai City, in the Jiangnan region, or in many places in the Huashu Kingdom, those who died at least knew that they had to kill each other in order to fight for the chance to survive. It was the helplessness of survival. Zhang Yi never boasted about being some kind of great good person, but he at least had his own bottom line. As long as others do not affect his interests or threaten his life, he will never kill anyone. Even after he has the power, he will try his best to save lives. However, Qin Shan and his jackal subordinates do not seem to directly kill people with their hands or swords. However, their methods are even crueler and more evil than that, simply treating people like toys and fooling them. Yes, this is indeed Qin Shan style. Just like what he did to Haiyan Haishu, he toyed with Haiyan Haishu's wife while forcing Haiyan Haishu to be grateful to him. Zhang Yi had faced mountains of corpses and rivers of blood before, and the pile of corpses in front of him did not make him feel fear, but instead a deep sense of extreme nausea and the urge to vomit. That kind of utter mockery and disregard for life was simply beyond description as a lack of humanity. That guy is a complete monster in human skin. In shadow space, everyone's faces changed as they watched the corpses piled up like rubbish, which were lightly described as being recovered for recycling. Fatty Sue rubbed his arms hard, and he thought of West Mountain Base. Even that place, which was like cannibalism, would give a mouthful of egg white to someone who stepped on the generator. Everything here made him feel creepy for reasons unknown, and it was a kind of alternative horror, because only someone who has lost their humanity could do such a thing. Uncle Yu's eyes turned bright red with anger as he looked at Haiyan Haishu and asked, "Is this the kind of life you've always lived?" Haiyan Haishu shook his head. "We've always lived in the capital city of prison. Although we sometimes went hungry, we've never had an experience like this. You have to understand that the place where Zhang Yi and the others came from is only an area of more than 100 kilometers from Prison City, which is near the Imperial City. But even this place is in such a miserable state. It's really hard to imagine what the situation is like in other places. Even Haiyan Haishu, who had been in the KG Kingdom for 3 years, was making retching sounds at this scene. He took the lead, and the others couldn't help but follow suit, rushing to find a trash can.
Ugh.
This is bullshit. This is absolutely inhumane. If I were a native of this place, I would rather just take a sword and die. But they have to endure the pain of being slowly tortured while singing praises of the place. This kind of harm is not just physical, it corrupts the soul as well. No wonder everyone here looks like a walking corpse. Haiyan Haishu said with a bitter smile, "Now you know my pain, don't you? Please, hurry and help me rescue Songmi. If it's too late, I'm afraid something will happen to her." Lu Karen looked at Yang Xinshin hesitantly. There was not the slightest fluctuation in Yang Xinshin's obsidian-like pupils. They had long since known where Li Songmi was, and it would be easy to rescue her. But they could not do that now, as it would alert the enemy. At this moment, Zhang Yi looked at the scene before him and did not speak for a long time. Yago looked at him with a strange expression and teased, "Hey, Chef Wu, you seem a little shocked, don't you?" Zhang Yi took a deep breath and said, "It really scared me." Yago laughed dismissively. To him, this was just a small scene. A chef is a chef. He can only kill chickens and fish with a cleaver. When faced with a truly bloody scene, he is so scared that he can't move.
Haha.
Yago laughed happily, thinking that Zhang Yi was just scared. Zhang Yi also pretended to be frightened and said, "Let's get out of here quickly. Let's go look somewhere else." He turned around and left, and Chao Wangchai said very enthusiastically, "Mr. Wu and Officer Yabu, you must be tired after walking for so long, right? Why don't you come to my house for some food?" The two men were very distinguished guests in Chao Wangchai's eyes. It was a great honor for him to be able to entertain such figures for a meal. Zhang Yi was physically fit and didn't feel tired, but he still wanted to find out some information from Chao Wangchai's mouth, and he also wanted to see what kind of life people lived in their homes here, so he looked at Yabu. "What do you say, Mr. Yabu?" It was freezing cold, and Yago didn't look like Zhang Yi, who was wearing a snug black battle suit to keep out the cold. He was already rubbing his hands together from the cold. Hearing this, he hurriedly said, "Let's go somewhere warm and drink some hot water." The two men followed Chao Wangchai and went to his home. In the distance, behind the corner of the street, the figure of Park Chongfan followed them from afar, and from a very long distance away, he could hear every word of the conversation clearly. His unique abilities made him perfect for reconnaissance and assassination. He was himself a first-class agent in the KG Kingdom's Secret Service Agency. As instructed by Choi Jae, he followed this man named Wu Yanzu all the way. However, after half a day of following him, he didn't notice anything unusual. The other party was just like an ordinary tourist, walking around and looking around, not even showing the slightest sign of nervousness. You have to understand that if the other party really was an agent who infiltrated the KG Kingdom in this kind of environment, they would definitely be cautious. Even if they put on a face of nonchalance, they would definitely be nervous in their hearts. Then they would inevitably show some signs.
But he didn't see any of this in Zhang Yi.
Of course, because Zhang Yi wasn't nervous at all. He didn't want things to go wrong, but that didn't mean he was afraid of anyone. Zhang Yi and Yagu arrived at Chao Wangchai's house. As the town's mayor, their family had the best living conditions. But even with such good conditions, it was just a modest bungalow. If it was too big, it wouldn't be able to keep warm, and the outside of the house was covered with a thick layer of snow to keep it warm. High-rise buildings, on the other hand, have difficulty achieving this. It is somewhat ironic that a snow house is the best shelter for keeping warm. Under Chao Wangchai's attentive guidance, Yagu and Zhang Yi entered their home. There were several other people in the room, and upon inquiry, they learned that they were Chao Wangchai's wife and 3 children. Due to the small amount of space, the room was exceptionally warm, but it was filled with a stench that mixed the smell of manure with sweat. Zhang Yi lifted the door curtain and took a step inside, but immediately retreated the next moment. Yagu also looked disgusted. Why is it so dirty? How are you going to let your guests go in and rest? Chao Wangchai was embarrassed and said with trepidation, I'm sorry. Our conditions here are limited. Zhang Yi silently took out a medical mask from his body and put it on his face, and then handed one to Yagu. The two then entered the snow house. Although it blocked out most of the smell, they could still faintly smell it. The house was completely sealed up except for the front doors, but the snow walls blocked up windows, so there was some light inside. Chao Wangchai hurriedly said to his wife, These two are distinguished guests from prison. Now go and get some fine food immediately for them to enjoy. His wife was also full of excitement and hurriedly went to the corner of the room. There was nothing to hide here, and Chao Wangchai's wife walked over to a table with a black dining cover on it. She lifted the cover as if showing off her treasures and showed Zhang Yi the food on it. Honored guest, this is the delicious food we have saved up for half a month. Grain by grain, please enjoy. Zhang Yi and Yaga looked over and saw that the thing they had hidden like a treasure was actually half a bowl of rice. Yes, only half a bowl. Zhang Yi believed that it was indeed the rice they had saved up grain by grain, because it was visible to the naked eye that the rice did not come from the same bag, and some of the rice grains still had their husks on. After half a month, the half bowl of rice had turned black and even sticky. It looked like a petri dish used to cultivate bacteria in a biology lab. Zhang Yi could imagine what it tasted like without even taking off his mask. But it was this half bowl of rice that the Chao Wangchai family had hidden away as a treasure, unwilling to eat it themselves and saving it especially for their guests from Prison City. Dear Excellencies, please don't be polite, eat. Chao Wangchai's wife said with a hopeful face, and the children in the room also looked at them with earnest faces, hoping that they would accept the kindness. Zhang Yi and Yaga both fell silent at the same time. How could they possibly eat something like this? At this moment, Zhang Yi also acted quickly. He pretended to reach into his pocket. In winter, people wear thick clothes and they're all down jackets with big pockets. So Zhang Yi pulling out a few packs of biscuits and bread didn't seem out of place. Thank you for your hospitality. I should be the one treating you to food today, Zhang Yi said, and then he shoved the food into Chao Wangchai's wife's hands and also pulled out some sweets and small bread and stuffed them into the children next to them. When he pulled out the food, he felt the whole room brighten up. It was the gaze of Chao Wangchai's family. Such good things are like sacred objects to them. These days, they can only scrape roots and tubers for a living, and even the life-saving baobabs on the Feijo continent have frozen to death in the cold temperatures. This is too precious. Chao Wangchai's voice trembled with excitement, while the women and children in the family stared at the food in their hands, oblivious to the outside world for a time. Zhang Yi waved his hand generously and said, Don't forget, I'm a chef. Making food is no trouble for me. After he repeatedly emphasized that these things could be eaten, Chao Wangchai let out a sigh of relief. Then he hurriedly asked his wife to put away this precious food. Zhang Yi was a little depressed. Why don't you eat it now? Chao Wangchai smiled awkwardly because we don't have anything delicious here. We have to save this precious food for other guests. Every once in a while, study groups from prison come here to learn the spirit of sane. Next to him, Yaga whispered to Zhang Yi, They can't bear to eat this stuff, Mr. Wu. The bread you gave them, if you took one bag to the black market and exchanged it for coarse grains, it would be enough to feed their family for 3 days. What Yaga referred to as coarse grains were not rough grains, but a mixture of grains, soil, and plant roots after being ground. Zhang Yi had no choice but to let it be. Just then, there was a sudden sound of footsteps outside. The thick, dirty door curtain was lifted, and a withered woman walked in. When her gaze fell on Zhang Yi and Yagu, it flashed with a gleam. You two are from prison, aren't you? Zhang Yi asked with a smile. How did you know? The woman smiled in a flattering way. Only a nobleman from prison would be able to wear such clean clothes and have such appearance. Zhang Yi was not fat and had a well-proportioned figure. However, a face that had not been sunken in by hunger was a symbol of wealth. In the KG kingdom, being fat was a kind of beauty. When he saw the woman, Chow Wang-chai walked over warily. "Dumala, what brings you here?" Dumala then looked at Chow Wang-chai, her tone becoming cold. "Oh, your brother is dead. Go take care of it." Chow Wang-chai heard the news of his brother's death, and there was not much fluctuation in his eyes. Tuku is dead, so he must have starved to death. He gave Zhang Yi and Yago a pleasing smile, bowed, and said, "Sorry, my brothers are dead. I'll go take care of it." Dumala immediately came over. "You go take care of it. I'll entertain these two honored guests." Chow Wang-chai tried to raise his voice, but due to hunger, he couldn't seem to shout with any momentum. "Dumala, these two honored guests are my guests. Stay away," Dumala said unwillingly. "At least let them go to my house to take a shit." Zhang Yi didn't say anything. He had to admit that since arriving in the KG Kingdom, he had been left speechless more times than in the previous few years combined. At one point, he thought there was something wrong with his ears. This woman, telling him to go to her house to take a shit? Chow Wang-chai was furious. "Don't even think about it. The excrement of these two honored guests belongs to our family." Even Chow Wang-chai's wife joined in the argument. They seemed to care a lot about the dung of Zhang Yi and Yago. Zhang Yi was stunned. He was sure he hadn't heard wrong. He looked at Yago, who also looked confused. Yago was a member of the royal guard and could live in the central city, even in the capital prison city. Where would he know anything strange about such a place? But watching the three listlessly struggling to argue, Zhang Yi gradually began to understand what was going on. It turned out that for the average person in the KG Kingdom, excrement was also a very precious resource. The KG Kingdom was originally poor and backward, but after the end of the world, it relied on the advantages of its geographical location, and a large population survived. However, reconstruction after the end of the world was very slow. Countries like Huaxiao Kingdom, Britannia, and Colombia, although they had suffered heavy losses, had retained the basic talent and industrial foundation before the end of the world thanks to their strong national strength. Therefore, after adapting to the disasters of the end of the world, they gradually established a civilization in the midst of the ice and snow. However, the KG Kingdom obviously did not have such capabilities. Their civilization reverted to the state it was in at the beginning of the 20th century. The vast majority of the common people could only engage in manual labor, and one of the most important jobs was farming. Fertilizer is also a high-tech product, and the KG Kingdom does not have the ability to produce it independently. In the past, it relied on imports. Now, in order to increase production, they can only use primitive fertilizers. Therefore, human feces must not be wasted either. Furthermore, prison has specifically made regulations to unify the management of feces in the KG Kingdom and prevent anyone from wasting this precious resource. A special department of the KG Kingdom must collect feces from every household. According to the regulations, each person needs to hand in 5 kilograms of manure per month. There are even professionals who grade this manure. The manure of Zhang Yi and Yago, who are being fought over by Chow Wang-chai and Dumala, belong to the very high level of manure. Of course, according to the laws of the KG Kingdom, the highest level of manure is the manure of martial Sane, which is known as golden manure. A precious piece of golden excrement is preserved in the Wulu District's Great Martial Memorial Museum for people to admire. KG Kingdom's famous literary figure Bushirin also wrote a modern poem to praise it. The poem reads, "Eternal Sun, the sacred gold scattered to the world author, Bushirin the evil devil brought ice and snow disasters, intent on destroying the world." People shivered in fear, freezing and starving to death by the roadside, their hearts calling out for the arrival of the savior. The great commander Ken Sane appeared from the eastern sky like the sun. His majestic figure radiated a warm light, and he brandished his iron fist to repel the cold devil. Commander Sane shouted at the sky, "O sun, do not hide your light and let the cold persecute my people." The sun reappeared and shone on the land of the KG Kingdom. Commander Sane shouted at the earth, "O earth, do not hide your grain. Let hunger not destroy my people." Then he scattered sacred gold, turning the cold earth into feral soil for a bumper harvest. From then on, the people of the KG kingdom had hope. People wept and cried out to their great and kind father, Commander Kensane, my beloved father. May the heavens bless you with eternal health and keep you high above the people like the sun. Zhang Yi listened to their conversation and suddenly asked Yabu, if the commander were to plant more, wouldn't that solve the food crisis in the entire KG kingdom? Yabu widened his eyes. Shush, shush. What food crisis? We in the KG kingdom have never had such a thing. Everyone can eat their fill, so no one goes hungry. Zhang Yi covered his mouth and said, I'm sorry, I spoke out of turn. In the end, Dumala still wasn't able to outargue Chao Wangchai and his wife, and left with a full face of regret. You see, even for ordinary people, the advantage of geographical location is very important when playing games. Zhang Yi glanced at Chao Wangchai and his brother. His brother lived not far from him, less than 200 meters away, inside another house with an ice and snow exterior. Chao Wangchai walked over and with difficulty dragged his brother from the house and out into the open, near the road. That way, the cleaning team or the corpse collection team would come by later and scoop him up directly to be processed into fertilizer or used as firewood. Chao Wangchai's face showed no expression from beginning to end, as if he was used to saying goodbye in this way. However, after standing in front of his brother's corpse for a while, he finally reached out and, with trembling hands, took out a red cloth strip from his breast pocket and tied it around his wrist. Brother, you are free from this life. If we meet again on the way to heaven, I will be able to find you by following this red cloth strip.